Some would say faith is the opposite of reason, but for Catholics, the two should go hand in hand. Why is that? What is the relationship between faith and reason? And why is it so important to Catholic social teaching? We'll talk about that and more now on Finding Communion. Hello, welcome to Finding Communion. I'm Rosemary Ford, editor of Parable Magazine. I'm here with Bob Dunn, the Director of Public Policy for the Diocese of Manchester. This podcast and the Parable column of the same name discuss the Church's work in the public square and the intersection of faith and politics. Today, we're here to discuss the relationship between faith and reason. So let's dive right in. So, Bob, what is the relationship between faith and reason in Catholic social teaching, and why is it so important?
Catholic social teaching treats faith and reason as two things that need to go hand in hand. Pope Benedict said that they need to engage in an ongoing dialogue with one another. We often think that faith and reason are totally divorced, right? And part of that is as a result of the Enlightenment, which, as the New Testament scholar N.T. Wright said, kicked God upstairs. And so in the last few hundred years, it's become the fundamental premise of Western society that God's up there and human beings are going to run the show down here, and that's it. Mm-hmm. Faith is something that is a matter for the next life, but not this one. The Church teaches that faith and reason need to go hand in hand because if they don't, both or either of them are going to go off the rails. Pope Benedict gave a really important address back in 2010 to the representatives of British society at Westminster. It's a brief address, and I hope we'll put it into the show notes because I would highly recommend that everyone read it. It's brief. It's only a couple of pages long. But in that address, Pope Benedict said that faith and reason need to sort of be a leaven for one another. If you take reason out of faith, then there can be distortions of religion. He identifies things like sectarianism and fundamentalism. Mm-hmm. If you take faith away from reason, then you have a world in which human dignity is insufficiently attended to. Technocracy can run wild. You have as he points out, the totalitarian ideologies of the 20th century. You have things like human slavery and the slave trade in the 16 through the 1800s in the West. So both of those things need to go together. And the idea that there's an intersection between faith and reason is one of the important things that we bring into the public square, because it's a reminder to the body politic that there are other things that need to be attended to other than sheer reason. We also look at reason as something that can guide and should guide the way that people make their decisions, and that the right result when somebody's making a decision in the Church's view is accessible to reason. You can make the right moral decision based on reason without even getting to the point where you're thinking about revelation or faith. Mm-hmm. I often think about our work in the public square as being explained. The reason that we're in the public square is because of our Catholic faith. But what we say in the public square is based on reason. We're not going to argue to a legislature that they should take a certain action on a piece of legislation
Sure.
because the Catholic Church teaches that something is true. We're going to argue the reasons why we believe that. So these two things go together, and that's one of the gifts I hope that we bring to the body politic.
Sure. Can you give some more kind of concrete examples of how faith and reason are, go hand in hand and how they play off each other? For example, maybe your physician-assisted suicide bill. Maybe that's a good one to talk about what role faith and reason played there in the arguments you made for people.
From our perspective, faith is brings to the fore the idea that each person has an inherent human dignity, an inestimable human dignity, which cannot be diminished, cannot be taken away. And so we, from a Catholic perspective, have a real concern about pieces of legislation that threaten that human dignity or threaten the common good.
Yeah.
However, that faith-based perspective is not something that we can expect the body politic to sign on to. People that don't believe in God are not going to adhere to an argument that everybody has a God-given human dignity. But people that don't believe in God, just like people who do, are certainly able to subscribe to the principle that every person, every individual is of inestimable value.
Mm-hmm.
Let's take thou shalt not kill.
Sure.
That's obviously a religious principle from the 10 Commandments, but you don't need to be a Jewish person or a Christian to believe that it's wrong to kill somebody, especially an innocent person. Those are the sorts of things that I'm talking about where I think it's evident that reason is the common language that we all have, that we can speak to one another in when we're in the public square.
Sure. So let me see if I understand this correctly. So let's take, the example, thou shalt not kill, right? Obviously a religious concept. It's one of the 10 Commandments, but there are very many reasons why that is not a good idea. For example, we can't just go out killing each other. When would it stop? Number one, society would completely break down. It also prevents people from building relationships or living near each other, which obviously is another societal good. There are very many reasons why we shouldn't just go out randomly and kill each other. Am I right in understanding that? Is that
totally?
Okay.
Totally.
Great.
And that illustrates the point very well.
Mm-hmm.
It's obvious, right? It goes without saying that it's wrong to kill people.
So many parts of society would just completely break down if that wasn't
right. And human nature, people often say that conscience is the voice of God speaking to us in the deep recesses of our being. We see that voice from our perspective is the voice of God, but other people are hearing that voice too. They may not hear it as the voice of God, but there's something that says to the human being that this is not the right way to do this, or this is wrong. And so we approach things from a different perspective, but we need to think about our common language. We're not going to be able to speak. If we're in Athens, we need to speak Greek, not Hebrew.
Very interesting discussion as always. Thanks, Bob. Okay, well, thank you for joining us on Finding Communion. Please check out our show notes for more on this topic. And also don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. We'll see you next time.